Let me ask you something. When you're watching a movie or reading a book or watching a TV show or playing a video game, does the character names make any difference what they are to you? Does it even matter what their names are? That's what I'm going to talk about on this episode. I'll be honest with you, I'm horrible with names. In real life, it takes me a while to remember people's names. Even at work, at my day job, I'm my IT manager. I've been working in the field for, over 15 years or so. Whenever there's a new employee, they introduce me to the new employee and then I have to go and help the new employee. The new employee will tell me his or her name. I will listen. She could say, "My name is Sarah." And I'll be like, "Nice to meet you, Sarah." Shake her hand or whatever the case may be. 10 minutes later, I have no idea what her name is. It goes in one ear, right out the other. It stays in my mind just long enough for me to say, "Nice to meet you," and it just disappears after that. I find myself like that with TV shows and books and stuff like and video games and everything. Like I can't tell you half the characters' names in video games unless the character has something about them that's very memorable, or if that particular character is the only character whose name that is really even mentioned. When it comes to gaming, a lot of times the character, the main character, Mario, is the only name you really ever hear, which of course is more names in the Mario series than Mario. I can't tell you the rest of them. I just know Mario and Luigi, of course, but those are the title characters. Those are the main ones you see. Those are really the only ones whose names you hear. In those situations, I'll remember the names. What I like as far as the media that I like books, I like TV shows, I like movies that has a cast of characters. The two main characters and the sidekick and the mom and the sister and the coworker. And I like movies and stories and stuff that just has a cast of characters that all interact with each other. I never remember those characters' names. So I'm wondering, what do you think about that? Does the character's name matter to you? If the character has a cool sounding name, does that make more of an impact on you than just a plain name? If a character name is John, are you more likely to remember the John character than if the name was something that was more not an everyday name? With me, it doesn't matter. I don't care if the character name is John or Mbutsu or whatever the name is. I'm not going to remember the name. I have to watch it a million times before the name sticks. So the reason I'm bringing this up, as I've said in previous videos, I'm an author. I've written several thriller books. A lot of my books tend to have the same things that I like to read and watch myself. A lot of my books tend to have a cast of characters. When it comes to that cast of characters, I always have to come up with all of these names for all of the different characters. And it's always been a problem with me. I don't want to use names of people I actually know in real life because I don't want them to read my book and be like, "Hey, that character has my name." And I want a name that won't distract you from when you're reading. Like if there's a name that's too complicated that when you see the name on paper, you spend a lot of time wondering how that name sounds versus who that character is in the story or what that character is doing in the story. I don't want a name like that, but I do want a name that to me seems catchy and something that'll be easy to remember, which is hard for me to gauge because like I said, I'm not that good at remembering names. I have a book that I wrote earlier this year. It's a kind of short book. It's a novella length book. The title of this book is called Dying to Confess. I wrote it beginning of last year, the end of last year, towards the end of the ending months of 2019. And right now it is available as part of a crime thriller box set. The crime thriller box set is called Notorious Minds Crime Thriller Box Set, which is a limited box set. My book was included in this. That's the only place where you can get this book right now. And the box set is actually a limited time and it's only going to be for sale for another couple of months. I'll put a link in the show notes just in case you happen to view this video before that time is over with and you would like to check it out. It's a lot of good books in it. It's about 20 thriller stories by 20 different authors. A lot of authors got together and contributed stories for this particular book. I'll tell you a little bit about my book, Dying to Confess. So Dying to Confess takes place in a small fictional town. It's a town that's in North Carolina. It's about an hour outside of the city of Charlotte. The town that the book takes place in is completely made up. It's a small town. It's one of those towns where everybody knows everybody. They only have one stoplight, one police station, one this, one that. Not a big town. Not a lot going on in that town. And one night during the evening shift, it's around 11 p.m., A man walks into the police station. The man's name is Lars Blaney. He walks into the police station. He walks up to the desk, and there's one police officer that's working the front desk. The police officer name is Officer Peters. He walks up to the desk and he tells the police officer, I want to confess to 9 murders. I want to confess to killing 9 people. So of course, this is a small town. There hasn't been a murder in over a year. There's not a lot of crime in this town. So the police officer, he's flustered. He spills his coffee all over his desk. He gets his stuff together and he looks up at the man. He asks him, what's his name? He's like, I'm Lars Blaney. And I'm here to confess to these murders. It's time for me to pay for what I've done. Officer Peters, he slowly gets up. He gets his cuffs out. He slowly cuffs Mr. Blaney and he pats him down, make sure he didn't have any weapons or anything. So then he calls out to Officer Milton and Officer Robinson, have them come out there and finish checking him out. After he's done his preliminary pat down and everything, he has the 2 other officers come and pretty much secure him, to get him ready to be taken back to the jail cells. So then he calls Detective Johnson and Detective Sally and Officer Brown to come in to let them know what's going on. So they come in and they're like, what's wrong? He explains to him, this man just came in. He said he killed 9 people. We need to, start an investigation. The man, not only does he say he kills the 9 people, he rattles off a list of names. Detective Johnson and Detective Sally starts investigating. The first thing they go do is they start contacting these people. It's a small town, so their contact information wasn't hard to find. So they were able to contact all 9 of these people. They were all women. Once they contacted them all, found out that all 9 of those women that Mr. Blaney claimed to have killed were very much alive. They all answered the phone. They all were alive. They weren't dead. Of course, the police station, they're getting upset because they're thinking Blaney is playing some kind of joke and this and that. But one of the last people that they contacted, I'm very much alive, but I have something that I need to tell you. This particular person goes into a long thing about an interaction she had with Mr. Blaney 2 years ago. This interaction was an illegal interaction. The interaction was something that even if he didn't kill the people, this interaction alone would put them in jail. Everybody goes crazy and they're like, wait a minute, this is serious. He may not have killed these people, but what he did do was serious. So they go on an investigation. The whole rest of the book is based on Detective Johnson and Detective Sally investigating Mr. Blaney, trying to find out what happened. And it's pretty interesting. They're going around, going to his house, going to his job, and just different things, trying to find out what happened. But if you want to really know, about the story, the reason why I'm bringing this up, once the box set that Dying to Confess is included in currently, once that box set is no longer for sale, which will be, I think, at the end of this month, I'm going to publish this story myself. I'll probably do that the beginning of next year sometime. Being that this story is just a novella length story, I want to write. The story itself begins and ends, and it's the end of the story. Now, what I plan on writing is 2 more novellas that will, they will start. The second novella that I'm currently writing now will take place a year after the events that ended the first story, Dying to Confess. All 3 novellas together will serve as pretty much an origin story for the one character, Detective Sally. The reason why it serves as an origin story as the one character, Detective Sally, is as I was writing Dying to Confess, Detective Sally kind of came into the story. That character wasn't a character that was listed in my list of characters when I first started, but as I started writing, Detective Johnson needed a partner. So then that's when Detective Sally was introduced into the story, which, as far as in my mind, in the story, they both pretty much introduced at the same time. When I was planning out the story, Detective Sally was a man. Soon after I got into writing the character and the story and building out more and got more ideas of what I wanted as far as Detective Sally as a character, I figured Detective Sally would be better if he was a she. So I went back and I changed Detective Sally to a woman, and all the ideas I had for the character I did in that story. But the problem I have now is I have a woman whose last name is Sally. Let me know what you think about that. I don't like that. I don't like if it's a man whose last name is Sally, which is the reason why I named it Sally, was because I thought it was kind of like an ironic name. You have a man, but his last name is like a woman's name. But now I have a woman whose last name is pretty much a woman's first name. And I kind of don't like that, especially since all of the characters All of the police officers, all of the detectives, everybody that worked in that police station are men, except for Detective Sally. Detective Sally is the only woman that worked in that police station. Now, there's other women in the story, but as far as my cast of characters, they're all men with the exception of Detective Sally. And here I am. I want Detective Sally to be the lead character. I want Detective Sally to be the character that I build a franchise on. You know, I want that character to be my Jack Reacher, or, you know, whatever other type thrillers where they have like the main character and you have a series of books and each book is based on that character's adventures. You know, for me, Detective Sally was that character. So that character, I named her Rebecca Sally. And I kept it that way. I didn't like it. I kind of felt indifferent about it. But at the time, before I knew it was going to be a part of that box set, I didn't know what I was going to do with that story. I just wrote it and had it edited, and it was just sitting on my hard drive. I didn't know what I was going to do with that story. But now that I have a plan for that story, I have a plan for that character, and I have a plan for that series, I'm not completely happy with that name. I want to give that character a cool name. So I've been thinking of different names, because my vision for that character and that story, that series of books that I plan on, you know, writing, my plan is for that character to be the character that all of those stories are based on. Like it will be the Rebecca Sally series, whatever, Dying to Confess, or whatever the name of the book. But I don't think Rebecca Sally is a name that I think is interesting enough to put as a title character on the cover of a thriller series. But does it really matter? You know, I was thinking about it. I was like, does it really matter? If you like the character, if it's not as interesting as a name, turn you off from the character, will that have any bearing on how you feel about the book? If you pick up a series, let's say a thriller series, and somebody says, get that Dying to Confess series, that's a good series of books, and you pick up, you know, the Dying to Confess book, and it says in bold letters, Dying to Confess, a Rebecca Sally series. Will something like that, something as simple as that, turn you off? If you don't like that name, if the name doesn't appeal to you, if it just sounds too plain or too boring or just out of place, will that be something that will make you not give that book a shot? Or would it be more about the character? Would you read the book, like the character, and the name is irrelevant? All the name is just a name now that you know as the character, and it doesn't matter if the name is bland or boring or whatever. That's what I'm struggling with right now. I know for me, like if you pay attention to when I just gave the description, I listed out all of the characters' names. Before I sat down to write this video, even though I wrote this story, you know, I've read it a million times, doing rewrites and going over fine details and everything. I read it a million times. I still had to go back and look at my cheat sheet with all of the list of character names and memorize all of those names for me to do the quick description of this story. And to be honest with you, I may still have gotten some of them wrong. That's how bad I am with names. So when it comes to names in a book, to me, it doesn't really matter. As long as I'm not spending a lot of time wondering how to pronounce a particular name in my head while I'm reading the book, it doesn't matter what the name is, because I'm not going to remember it anyway until I've read it long enough to where it's burned into my memory. And even still, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Does a name have any bearing on what you feel about a book? And I'm talking about something that you haven't read yet. Like you heard something was a good book, and you just picked up the cover, read the synopsis, and you saw that name. Does that name have any bearing on anything? I'd like to hear about that in the comments below. Also, if you have any ideas for a cool female detective name, let me know that also in the comments. If you like this video, make sure you click the like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. To hear more stories about my books, sign up for my newsletter at DLJonesBooks.com/subscribe.